Recording in progress.
All right, good morning. Welcome to the Thurston County Board of County Commissioners Board Work Session for Wednesday, January 7th, 2026. It's 10:04 a.m. and 10:03 a.m. My name is Ty Mincer, Chair of the Board. To my left is Vice Chair Commissioner Wayne Fournier, Commissioner Carolina Mejia, and Commissioner Emily Klaus. Commissioner Grant is excused this morning, and County Managers here, Leonard Hernandez. We have the meeting live streamed to the YouTube channel, Thurston County YouTube. And we have, as usual, written public comment can be received by the board up to 2 hours in advance of the meeting and distributed to the board, and action may be taken at this meeting. So with the calling of the meeting to order, we have item 2, the 2026-2027 biennial budget resolution to increase property tax revenue.
Thank you so much, Chair. There was a correction that was needed to be made, and I know that our budget and finance manager, Summer Miller, is here remotely with us, and so I'll just ask if she could come off mute and speak to it at a high level and see if there's any questions from commissioners.
Good morning, Commissioners. Happy New Year. Summer Miller, Budget and Finance Manager in your office. I am here to notify you that after some communication with the Assessor's Office staff, that there was an error that was overlooked on number 2 of the resolution adopted on December 16th on the total dollar amount and percentage for the road levy collection. We want to be sure that we're capturing the dollar and percentage amount to include the road levy shift. And that is in the amount of just under or just at 4.8 million or 22.5%. Happy to answer any questions if you have them.
So Summer, is this, maybe this is a question that you don't know or you're relying on maybe advice from legal, but is there any problem with the timing of us making this correction?
There isn't. For board knowledge, this was reviewed several times with staff in the assessor's office through the workbooks and the worksheet calculations that began approximately at the end of June, beginning of July. We never actually shared the written resolution itself. Those were shared through screen sharing in Teams meetings just to review them. But keep in mind that the assessed valuations are a moving target throughout the year as the assessor's office is doing their due diligence on what the assessed values look like across the county. So this was an oversight. I did ask specifically to the assessor staff to verify with Department of Revenue as well as with legal if there were any concerns with the board taking this action in early January. There were no concerns from DOR. There's nothing in statute that prohibits you from making this correction. It's just to ensure we get maximum collection to shift that 4.7 million from road to general fund.
And the timing and process was reviewed with our legal team, and I appreciate Summer getting advisement that this is an acceptable approach.
That's correct. Thank you.
Yeah, DOR, my experience with DOR is they're pretty meticulous, technical. So if they're consistent with what our teams, then that gives, I think, me a good level of confidence. Anything else? Questions from commissioners?
I move to rescind resolution 16-581 and approve a new resolution for purpose of correcting the increase in the levy amount as reflected under paragraph 2.
I'll second.
Motion and second to rescind a resolution and approve essentially a corrected version of that resolution. Discussion on this motion. Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. All right, next up is our 2026 legislative session preview with our consultant, Deborah.
Good morning, Deb. Thank you so much for joining us. And as you're getting settled in, just a huge hearty thank you for all the work you did last legislative session. That was, I think, my first legislative session, by the time I arrived in 2024, had ended, and it is fast and furious when it picks up. And I understand that it was quite a trying and complicated session, but your guidance and help through that was extremely valuable to our organization and advancing some of our efforts. So thanks for being here, and with that, I'll hand over so you can kind of walk us through what this year has to hold.
Thank you, Leonard. And I think that's a good description of last session, and I think you can double that for next session.
Okay.
So it's gonna be the short session, the 60-day session. Last session, it was a 105-day session. They did the biennial budgets. The short sessions are the supplemental budget sessions, and those are designed to make tweaks to the budget, if there's revenue changes, caseload changes, that kind of thing. They're gonna have to do a lot more than tweak the budget this coming session that starts on Monday. The way that it's been characterized to me by legislative staffers are, yeah, it's a short session, it just gives you less amount of time to do the same amount of stuff. And so pre-filing of bills began December 1st. There's already been 374 bills pre-filed, and that doesn't count whatever goes into the system today until Monday. So, and it's gonna be fast and furious. The first session cutoff date is February 4th. That's 3.5 weeks into session. So any bills that are important to the county, we wanna make sure that we get a hearing the first or the latest, the second week of session. So we need to be communicating with the prime sponsors of those bills and with the committee chairs to ensure that we get hearings on those bills. And in the meantime, they're gonna still be making adjustments to the budget. They're estimating there's a $2.3 billion gap from what they passed in the 2025 session. Remembering that we have to have a balanced 4-year budget. So it's going to be very challenging. Some of that is attributed to federal funding cuts, and some of it is increased caseloads, and some of that is a reduction in tax revenue. And then the floods happened. So we'll have to see what that does to not only the operating budget, but also the capital budget and the transportation budgets. There's just been massive damage that the state will have to be addressing. So some of the significant issues, where's my quick priorities?
There you go.
Okay, and then the next one. Thank you. So the state revenues continue to decline. Some of the significant issues, as I mentioned, are increased caseload costs and the federal funding cuts. The governor's proposed budget was released, and he had $800 million in cuts to his agencies. He's proposing to use $1 billion from the rainy day fund to help with the budget shortfall, and he's diverting hundreds of millions of dollars from other fund sources in order to help cover the shortfall. And then in terms of new revenue discussions, we know that the governor is backing a millionaire's tax. And so that is a 9.9% tax on those that make $1 million or more per year for income, not their assets. And then they're tying that proposal to a reduction in sales tax on certain items like baby and hygiene items, expanding the Working Families Tax Credit Program, increasing K-12 school funding, and then lowering the key tax rate for small businesses. So we'll have to see how all that comes together. It's anticipated that if something like this passes, that it wouldn't go into effect until 2029. And there is very strong Republican opposition to this proposal. And I expect that for other tax increase proposals that come out. And then there would also be legal challenges. So the 2029 implementation date kind of factors all that in. Okay, let's try
Can I
this.
ask a question? So I heard yesterday something about when you were saying diverting other sources, and I heard yesterday that one of those is like Climate Commitment Act. And I'm just curious, like legally, wasn't that passed to say we're gonna tax this and then use it for
Yes.
clean energy and stuff? So how do you then turn around and take that money and put it in the general fund?
Well, I think that you would have to interpret diversion the way that you would interpret that. Right now, the way that it's state law, so it only takes a simple majority to change state law in terms of how CCA money is
The legislature could take an
appropriated.
act and say, we're gonna allow
Yes.
it to be used for things beyond what it originally was.
However, they successfully defended the Climate Commitment Act when there was an initiative out there stating that they would only use it for those things. And we know that, the chair of House Environment and the chair of Senate Transportation and many other prominent Democrats are adamant that it will only be used for the reasons that it was passed. So, I don't see, I know there are some proposals out there that would like divert it into transportation and, that kind of thing. I don't see that happening. I think there will still be a discussion about that. I think that they'll look at the nexus between the Climate Commitment Act revenue and what the proposals are. But I don't expect that they would divert it to things that don't fit within the current law.
Thank you.
I could be wrong. So in terms of the county's legislative priorities, the Regional Justice Center, we're seeking the $5 million. And thank you, Commissioner Fournier, for contacting Representative Barno. It's great that he's going to be our lead sponsor on this. He is in leadership position on the Capital Budget Committee. It's going to be important to show bipartisan support for this. I have meeting requests out to every legislator that represents Thurston County, as well as other key legislators to talk with them about this. One of those is this afternoon. And so we'll continue to get those meetings set up. Reimbursement for the judicial reimbursement that was removed for the current fiscal year. Again, we are.
Sorry, Deb. I know that we have been talking a lot about it internally, but the Regional Justice Center is huge for our county, for our entire region, for all the partners that interact. And so I'm super grateful and proud of the teamwork that's happening in quick pacing with commissioners, engaging with our delegation, working with, leveraging some of the relationships, Deb coordinating on the back end so that we can move some of this forward and identify potential funding. I think that the chair's coordination of the lunch that we had and some of the changes, how we did that, created a very clear and focused message. That's what we also heard at the Chamber's regional legislative forum from our delegation, that the clearer the ask and the more focused the ask, the better chances we have to get funding. So, and then what I'm also wanting to highlight is there's so much internal excitement about where the county is headed and the decisions the board made in 2025 about shifting and moving to a new plan and the work that we're doing. We plan to have something before the board later this month after we talked with stakeholders about us consolidating our operations and our buildings into one location. The city of Olympia is super excited about what that means to them. We were just on a call with the city manager yesterday or the day before. So there's a lot of things dovetailing, and it may be easy to be missing all the other work we're doing, Board of Health and all the land use things that we're working on. But this will change the identity of our organization. This is going to, I mean, when you hear that elected officials like John Thunheim is riding his motorcycle around in the parking lot of the new campus, they're just excited to know that they get to move out of the facility that they're in, which is completely dilapidated, and into a new facility. That's exciting. That's something that this board did, and I just want to make sure that we can take the victory lap in what we put together, and now the work of going and getting partners to support it is huge. So thank you for the commissioners that are actively keeping this on the priority, engaging with folks, having conversations, so that we elevate the importance of this and get a win for Thurston County and bring this project over the finish line.
Yeah.
Josh, you have anything you want to add?
That's great. I think also I'd add, just so we're all on the same page, the reason that this matters to the state is that there's over 100 RCWs and WACs that require or suggest that Thurston County is the sole venue for items that happen throughout the state. So if there's a litigation that's happening in Benton County or Okanagan, that they want to have a court that is the court of jurisdiction, Thurston County becomes that court. So we're doing work for all of Washington State here in Thurston County, which is why it matters to the legislature, which is why the funding is important specifically for Thurston County and different than all other counties in Washington State.
Yeah, I think it's not hyperbole to say that this is a defining moment for Thurston County. I know when I came, I saw the different historic county administrative offices. They're awesome. They look like castles down in Olympia. Well, we effectively are going to be setting up the county for the next 20, 30 years, beyond that, into a single campus where services will be integrated, where we're gonna have a handle on how we manage it. However, there's still a lot of work. It's going to be the priority for this team in 2026 to get us over the finish line, to get people into those buildings in the next several years and to do all the groundwork. So I can't stress enough from an administrative side how thankful we are that commissioners are focusing on this, that they're talking about it. It's having an impact. Sorry, Commissioner Fournier.
Yeah, I keep thinking a lot of the same things. Like, this has been a legacy struggle and something that has plagued this organization, and we're taking it off the table. So future generations are not gonna have this problem. So it's gonna open up them to be able to bring Thurston County to higher levels of success than we can even realize right now. So it's exciting to not be passing this problem on to the next generation. I'm wondering for Deb, we have letters of support from some organizations, and I think the union with the Attorney General's office. Who are we missing? Is it the city of Olympia? Have they given you a letter that you can walk hand in hand with? Is there anyone else we need to get something to put in your portfolio on?
So we need the letter from the union, we need the letter from the AG's office. I've already forwarded the City of Olympia letter, I forwarded the shared legislative agenda that shows this as a priority for the region.
I think we just got AG.
We got Lacey this week and AG this morning.
Yeah, I was gonna say, my EA just said we got a short letter from the Attorney General.
Oh, that's
From Nick.
awesome, okay.
That's amazing.
And I'm getting a meeting set with Senator Trudeau, who used to work in the AG's office, so that will be great. She's the lead in the Senate for Capital Budget.
Yeah,
And back with the AGC too.
it's hard. I'm really excited about this because when I went to a couple of the holiday gatherings for the courts, they normally have those. Staff I didn't even know came up to me and like, "You're the county manager, right? We're so excited to get into a new building." And because we've been working on it for a while now, it's kind of like, it's a topic that we spend time on and then we move on to other things. But to our hardworking staff, this is something that has so much meaning because, to your point, Commissioner Fournier, and commissioners that have been here longer than myself and other commissioners, this has been talked about a lot. There's been plans and starts and stops, not to anyone's fault, but because it's a very complicated situation. But I can't stress the fact that while we've made the initial steps and decisions, there is a lot of work to implement this. And so we may have kind of got this big jumbo plane off the ground, but we got to fly it and then land it. And there's funding and finances. There's how we are going to interact for space. There's still the conversation we're having with the courts about can we utilize space effectively? And we're excited to meet with them, I think, next week sometime, to give them an update and then come to the board once we get their input. But that's going to be a priority that really takes a lot of our organizational's bandwidth and focus, and rightfully so. Because as mentioned, if we can take this worry and issue off the table, we'll set ourselves up for a difference. The other thing that I didn't experience, and some of you did, is the collaboration that you all had when you were all at one campus. I often hear that talked about, how that's missed. We could just walk over and have conversations, and that's gonna be accomplished again when we all come together. So lots of opportunities and abilities. There are still challenges on the horizon, so I appreciate, Deb, you fighting for this and the commissioners making a priority. I still think there's work to do. The tour that Commissioner Mensah and Commissioner Fournier facilitated for the AG's office and the unions, I think it's paying dividends in awareness and the support we need. I honestly believe we need to do a lot more of that. We need to continue to bring stakeholders in to show them that this isn't just we need a new facility. This is where the facility is at and where our courts are at in performing services. It's unacceptable. And you really can only experience that when you walk through it. To me, one of the funniest things happened is when we said as a cliche, we're holding this building together with duct tape and chewing gum. And then someone pointed out, look, there's duct tape
It
right
was me, I was like, I thought it was like hyperbole, metaphor. Then I looked down and like, the wiring was duct taped to the floorboards in the nicest courtroom in the whole
nicest courtroom,
complex.
yeah.
I was like, okay, well, this is, and everybody got a chuckle out of that, but I think it made the point.
Yeah. So I think I've said enough on this topic. It's just, it's exciting. It's a signature effort that we're working on. And I know it has greatly helped to have 2 additional assistant county managers because they're handling it on different ends, one from the facility, from the building side, and then the other one's the internal service side with IT and the other components. And there's a lot of work to be done.
So I agree with everything that you said, and appreciate all the support. It's gonna be a heavy lift. I've heard that the House Capital Budget Chair, who we're talking to this afternoon, has put a limit of $1 million. This, again, was before the floods, put a limit of $1 million for local community project requests. So if we're gonna get this through an LCP, it's gonna have to be a multi-legislative district request where they're all saying, yes, this is important to us. And as important as this is to Thurston County for all the reasons that were mentioned, we have to make the case, like Josh said, that this is beneficial to the state, because I'm sure there are other courthouses in other counties that could also use money. And so to convince others, especially not just the ones that have a piece of Thurston County, but others that don't represent the county, that are in leadership positions, that this is important, it's gonna be difficult. And so we have to really keep on it, and all of the work that you've been doing is really important.
Do you need support in that meeting? Do you have anyone going with you?
This afternoon, yes, Commissioner Mejia is joining me, and then I sent an email this morning about a meeting with Senator Schessler on the 19th to see if we can get someone there. He is the lead Republican on the Senate capital budget.
I know we've got that whole argument about, that we run the state court system essentially. I think that's really the lead. But I will point out, Eric Johnson, from the director of Washington Associated Counties, the director goes to every court. It's like a kind of a thing. It's kind of a little WASAC thing. They go to every courthouse, like over the court, when you're the director and the president, they go with the president. And he has basically said multiple times, we have the worst courthouse in the state of Washington. So even if we were just having to, even if we were having to compete just on that basis.
Can we get that in writing from him?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, like, get a tape recorder. I mean, I don't think he was BSing when because he's been to every single one and multiple times. And he says ours is definitely the worst in the state of Washington.
And I think it was said in one of our meetings at the end of 2025 that the county has often joined other jurisdictions in their efforts to receive funding, and which we should. It's a partnership bringing dollars into the region, and so it is exciting to see our partners joining for Thurston County's need that then benefits all of them. As in 2026, we are still working on the implementation of Olympia Court System, and that's a huge undertaking in record time to help the city of Olympia with their time frame. So this organization, and thinking about as we finish 2025, there are some things, big, substantial things that we are working on, legacy things that we are working on. And so we need to continue to talk about that and communicate that and make that a focus, because again, getting it over the finish line is as much a priority as starting.
And so, all of the work that staff did that highlight all of the statutes and, that pertain just to Thurston County, or they can also pivot to Thurston County, has been really helpful as well. And so we're using that information to talk about restoring the cut that the legislature made to that for the current fiscal year. So that's something that I'm trying to get those meetings set up as soon as possible, so that if we can get that in the supplemental budget for the current fiscal year, that would be important. And the proviso language for that one stayed the same, they just cut the funding, and the proviso language says, and it's the intent of the legislature that this be continued. Well, now if that goes through that way, it's only for 1 year, so we got stuff to do on that one. And then on public defense, also that's been a very high priority, and WASAC's working on this too. Senator Torres has pre-filed a bill, and the companion bill has also been pre-filed. Representative Parsley has signed on to that. And that's Senate Bill 5913, that removes the language that says the standards endorsed by the Bar for Public Defense should serve as a guideline to local governments. And instead it says, if practicable, standards adopted by local governments shall comply with state court rules and may incorporate provisions of bar standards that don't conflict with the court rules. So that kind of helps a little bit. And then Senate Bill 5914, again, is Senator Torres, and Senator Trudeau has signed on as number 2. There's 3 different sections to that bill. The first one and the last one have some changes on how you can get the funds and different things, standards that you have to meet in order to get them for being reimbursed for public defense. Section 2 of that bill is one that creates a graduated funding structure from the state. So in fiscal year 27, the state would fund not less than 15%. In the next year, it would be, for fiscal year 29, it would be 20. For fiscal year 30, it would be 25, and then 31 and after would be 30%. That's gonna have a big fiscal impact, so we'll see how that moves through the system. That is in its own separate sections. It's possible that the first and third section of that bill could go forward without section 2, or they could change the timing of section 2 so that it was beyond the current 4-year cycle that they're working with. So we'll have to see. But remember that Senator Robin, and this is a Senate bill, Senator Torres is ranking on Ways and Means, but the chair of Ways and Means, Senator Robinson, has told her members, don't bring me any proposals that cost money. We don't have any money. So we'll have to see what happens
So
with
that first bill, it sounds like what you're saying is it would give us, it would say that it would soften the requirement to adopt the caseload standards, or what?
So here's a copy of the bill, Commissioner. So the first bill, oh, sorry, that 5913, that's 14. 13's, right now, the way that the language is written, it says that local governments should comply with the guidelines of the Bar Association. So we know the bar standards and the court standards were different. The court standards gave 10 years. And so what that bill does is it softens it, and it says that if practicable, local governments can adopt what the court said, and they may incorporate what the bar guidelines are if it doesn't conflict with the court rules. So it's just kind of.
So the court said 10 years. I thought that's what we were supposed to do. What's the bar guidelines?
The bar was right away, if I remember correctly.
We weren't planning to do that.
This just makes it clear that you'd be okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it doesn't change there's still the necessity to do the 10-year.
No.
This, if practicable,
And may.
is that a change?
I think I would want to hear from the folks that are directly involved in this, but my understanding is that, you know, they need something in order to be able to not do what the bar said, but to do what the court said.
Okay. All right, well,
Okay.
okay. I mean, I really don't wanna go that direction, but I just was trying to understand what that was trying to do.
So I put that on the county's tracking list, and so we'll keep an eye on that, and I'll keep you updated on how that moves through the system, and yeah. And then some of the other things on the county's legislative agenda are the ITA courtroom. I'm not sure if that's gonna end up being part of the new Regional Justice Center, or we needed some more information about, you know, what is needed for that and what the amount would be, so that when we're talking with legislators, obviously, they need to know what the highest priority is, and then, but we can tell them that there's also a need for this. We talked about it last session too, so that's, especially with Senator Dengra, she understands. The crisis stabilization facility. I forwarded the Seattle Times article that came out a couple days ago on that, where it talks about that they're in crisis in terms of long-term funding. The bill that would have an increase in the tax on the 988 line would help with that. And so that might be something that actually gets looked at this session. But there's a recognition that something needs to be done. You can't just put these centers out in communities and then expect the counties to cover it.
That's what's happening.
But that's what's happening, right? So there are a couple of provisos in the governor's proposed budget in the healthcare authority section. One that's like overall HCA, MCOs, BHASOs get together, figure this out, you know, what do we need by December of this year? And then there's another proviso that says for Thurston County, Thurston Mason, BHASO, HCA, MCOs get together and figure out what's needed for the facility in Lacey. No timeline on when they have to come up with something on that and figure out a sustainable funding model. And then that will be used to provide requests, future funding requests. So had a couple discussions with Joe and with the lobbyists from Connections on that. A lot of frustration. I know Joe's putting together a one-pager, so we'll have to see what happens with that.
Just to go back real quick on the ITA courtroom, on the Involuntary Treatment Act, that will be a separate facility. The focus should remain very clearly on the Regional Justice Center. And so just so that the board and Deb, you've got the clarity on that we don't want to muddy the waters on our requests as it relates to the LCPs. So Regional Justice Center takes primary.
Yeah, it's not to say that it's not important, but I think everyone would agree that if we have to have a single focus, which we're being encouraged by our delegation to have, that the Regional Justice Center would be top of priority.
Okay.
I just want to add on the crisis stabilization facility that, Joe is working on a one-pager. We've also contacted, we've been working with Brad Banks from Wasac, and he's been kind of helping us assist and having these conversations. I know Joe has touched base with Healthcare Authority once again and kind of just to figure out what's going on. We have a couple of meetings that Joe is working on setting with different representatives just to kind of have these conversations. You know, the difference, you know, in our facility, and I think that we're going to try to highlight is the fact that we are basically named in a settlement, right? So this is, you know, the state has to comply with the settlement, and that's one of the things that we're trying to highlight is compared to the other jurisdictions, we are actually part of that settlement that came through and needing a crisis stabilization facility. So, you know, if hoping it doesn't get to it, but, you know, there might be, I know the parties of that case have been asking us, the BHASO directly about this, and asking for updates on what is happening as well, because they're very interested to see this coming through.
Thank you. Okay. Right-of-way funding, that is maintained in the governor's proposed budget at $55 million a year. However, for the second fiscal year, he changed the funding source and only $35 million from the general fund and then the other $20 million from the Housing Trust Fund account. So the people that are watchdogs for that account will have to see how they react to that proposal. But that's one of the things that the governor had proposed in order to help with the general fund issue. So just leave that one there. And then on the shared legislative agenda, there was something on there asking for $1 million for a South Sound Basic Law Enforcement Academy area academy. And so Senator McEwen did pre-file Senate Bill 5958. Senator Bateman is number 2. The amount in that bill is for $5 million for fiscal year 27. So that has been pre-filed. And then there are a couple of other bills that have been pre-filed that the county is interested in. Representative Parsley and Representative Dolios, number 2, filed House Bill 2194, which is gives counties the ability to assess a cultural access tax if the city has already done it. Makes it clear that the county can do it too. But if the city has done it, then the city gets a credit from the county. But the other thing that it does, and I've reached out to the other 2 counties that have cities that have done that to see if they would be willing to support this, and so I'm waiting to hear back from them. But the other thing too that I pointed out is that for the cities that have adopted this bill is important to them also because the bill makes it clear that they can do it for an additional 7 years if they want.
Oh, nice.
So I'm hoping that that means that those cities will support it. Wasac is likely to support it. I'm sure they'll support it. And at this point, AWC is neutral, but if their cities say, no, we want this, then AWC will support it too. So the hearing schedule for next week comes out tonight. So we'll know tonight what bills are scheduled for hearing next week.
And that's, again, another significant item that the board talked about in 2025 as we were looking at what are additional options to counties for revenue. So Deb, thank you for prioritizing that and keeping the conversation moving forward. And for commissioners who have engaged in that conversation, it's been helpful with our delegation for them to understand the context.
And when it's up for a hearing, I'm happy to testify on behalf of the county. If you want to testify, if we just want to sign in support. I'm assuming that will go to the House Finance Committee. Representative Orcutt is ranking on that committee.
I'd love to help. House Bill 2216. That's one that originated here. We wrote, Representative Parsley took it on as a statewide initiative. It's the Emergency Responder Protection Coordination Act. And then it's also in Congress with Congresswoman Randall. Its home was here. It would be great if we could continue advocating for it. It was pre-filed by Parsley and you, Callan, Mina, Hall, and Peterson. And there's no money involved. It's just creating some new language to protect emergency responders from political interference.
Yeah, okay. That's a good list of sponsors too, so.
Thank you.
Okay. Make sure that we get that on there and
Okay, do we
highlight
need
it.
a thumbs up, or is everybody, I mean, we already put that forward together.
And then House Bill 2258, which has to do with animal shelter funding. And Representative Parsley is the prime sponsor. Representative Farivar from Seattle is number 2 on that bill. And it would allow cities and counties to councilmanically impose up to $2.50 household excise tax to help fund animal shelters and animal services. And the bill.
Household excise tax, what is that?
You know what? I had to look that up. And so a household excise tax is not directly paid by the consumer like a sales tax is, but by the merchant before the goods can be sold. And it's a flat per unit tax paid by the merchant.
So we can put it on things that are like pet related?
I think you can put it on whatever. You can put it on alcohol, you can put it on cigarettes, you can put it on, yeah.
Do we have to?
Tonight.
It would be councilmatically that we would.
I'm saying like, do we have the flexibility to put it on certain items that are like pet related? So that we're not asking non-pet owners to subsidize pet ownership?
The bill doesn't say anything like that. It just defines what a dwelling unit is and what a parcel is, and it's on non-residential parcels. So I'm sure there will be a lot of discussion about this. I'm expecting that the Association of Washington Business will come out in strong opposition. So we'll have to see what happens with this, but yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I've been in a lot of conversations, and I think I mentioned this as we were talking about JASCOM funding at the end of last year. And I mentioned that I talked to Representative Parsley about giving us options for animal services. And so since then, we've had a couple of meetings to kind of discuss how to move forward with this. This has been the proposal that was kind of brought forward. There were several proposals that the FER caucus at the legislature was discussing. And this was the proposal that kind of came out, and as kind of the main one. So I would ask the board to be supportive of this. Representative Parsley is, not just looking at our jurisdiction, but she knows kind of what all of us are going through in terms of animal services and trying to provide a different mechanism for counties to fund animal services, not just counties, but all jurisdictions.
Yeah, I think that's the dynamics that we've heard even at the mayor's and city managers meetings about everyone having restricted funding, and the conversations that I know I've had with my peers. Everyone understands that JASCOM is super important. It needs to be funded. But it's unfortunate. It's in a time where the county, other jurisdictions' budgets are probably constrained to the point where they haven't been in past years. So this is a very interesting concept, and the thought that it could be county-wide could be a financial game changer for JASCOM, and them no longer having to be dependent upon the rising tide and fall of their jurisdiction's budgets. So I know that there's going to be a path for it to follow, but from the outset, it could be something that really impacts the entirety of this county and brings a level of equity of service to all areas.
And, I have started reaching out to commissioners across the state just to kind of gauge their kind of where they're at on this. I've heard a lot of positive feedback, and it's something that we're going to possibly be discussing this Thursday at the WASAC Legislative Steering Committee meeting, as we're launching our first meeting this Thursday. So
I still don't understand from this whole conversation, is it tailorable, or is it like it's a tax on a set of things, and it's either we do it or we don't do it, and it's already prescribed in law what it would apply to?
yes.
And what would it, and it's business, it's what would it apply to? What would be taxed?
It's an excise tax,
On what?
local household excise tax.
We can get the details for you.
I have the bill once.
We can round that out. I think it's a really good question, like what is going to be taxed?
I'm sure that'll be a topic of discussion when they hear the bill, and everything's tailorable until it gets to the governor's desk, and even he can make changes to it. So, in terms of, veto portions or all, but, yeah, so I'm sure that will be a topic of discussion, and there will be proposals to alter that, so.
I don't know, I'm just saying that, I'm just thinking generically, I don't know what we would wanna do, but I don't understand, if you were gonna pass something like that, why wouldn't you let local jurisdictions scale it back if they wanted to, right? Like,
You do have the ability, the way it's written, to scale it back. You just can't exceed $2.50.
well, I mean, scale it back in terms of what's taxed.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Why couldn't a local jurisdiction say, we're only gonna apply this to dog food or pet toys?
I think it would make it difficult for implementation,
Okay.
and I'm assuming that it would go through the Department of Revenue.
You're probably right about that.
Revenue would have, there will be a fiscal note in terms of
It'd be too
implementation.
complicated if every county had a
Yeah.
different set of items.
I think that just looking at it, I don't, there's no. It leaves it pretty much bold. It doesn't cut it out in two areas, so I'm sure it might change from now until the end.
I guess I'll just bug your ear, Commissioner Mejia, and then you can report back after the meeting, but like, I'm curious as to like, when you're saying $2 or like $2 on, like, on what, you know what I mean? Like, $2 on a 50-cent candy bar or $2 on anything over $100, like, I don't have a sense of what is being taxed in this.
It's not clear in the legislation.
Early days still.
Yeah, so as that becomes clear, I'd be curious to hear how that evolves. Go ahead.
Okay. So, the next slide, please. Thank you. So session starts Monday. Things really, well, they've been heating up, but as I said, the schedule for next week's hearing comes out tonight, and then they always make changes to it. And what I'll do is I will send Josh the list of bills that are on your tracking list that are up for hearing. Please, if there are bills that aren't on that list that should be on that list, let me know. It would be great to get feedback from you right away on those bills that, you know, you support, that you have concerns with, that you want to testify on, you want me to testify on for you. I have meetings on Thursday nights with the county lobbyists and also the city lobbyists. And we talk about the bills that are on the schedule for the next week and where things are at with that and who has concerns and what's happening. So that will help inform what will happen in those hearings. But if you had feedback on those bills that you want to provide, I can provide that to the associations. And I'll.
Commissioners, if I could interrupt, sorry, Deb. What we'll try to do is, when we get that, maybe, Amy, we can agendize something for next week so that we can get your board direction, on the supporting of the bills. We can get that cleared out, then it makes it a lot more effective for Deb to start plugging in our support when invitations, if you want to come to hearings, or if we need that, or if she's going to testify on our behalf, versus what we've seen of the more case by case, which then makes it difficult for her to act, and sometimes things move so quick.
So obviously then there's bills that connect to our priorities. That's, but the next level are all the other bills that may affect us in some way. And we've done that a couple different ways during the time I've been on the board. I'm just curious what the plan is. I mean, it was, I've complained in the past about the kind of overwhelming, like the former county manager would like create this spreadsheet and he tried to be comprehensive and go through every bill that could possibly touch us. And then we were supposed to give thumbs up and thumbs down as support. And it was, you know, I mean, it's so complex and it's like, I did not have the information to say up or down on these complex pieces of, you know, changes to the Growth Management Act that have all these so it was overwhelming. So like, I'm trying to find that middle ground that's a little more sensible, like where we obviously need to weigh in on, like, if, you know, if somebody drops a bill and it has nothing to do with our priorities, but it would very much put an unfunded mandate on us or affect our business, we need to, you know, have a way of weighing in on that. But like, in my opinion, that should be a pretty, you know, that it should only be the most impactful ones that kind of the board really just weighs in and discusses and gets down into it. Cause I'm not gonna take a position on something superficially when I don't really know what it does or, you know, so, and we don't have time I don't have the time to learn all the nuances of all the bills that touch us in any possible way. That's just not possible. That's been my experience. So I would like us to come up with kind of, or agree that we're gonna kind of, there's gonna be some kind of vetting through assistant county managers, county manager, you know, consultant, like however it is that to where we are looking for those bills that are impactful to us, but we don't get overwhelmed by them.
And yeah, I think the process is important. Yeah, I want to thank Commissioner Mejia, who's come up with I think a helpful framework. We'll be sitting down with her quickly to talk about that and then hopefully bring that to the board fairly quickly. Because you're right, it is overwhelming and we will not be able to move fast enough to provide that kind of upward. And then what we also don't want is our board saying, our members of the board saying, yes, that the board is supportive of something when the full board isn't. So I appreciate the work that Commissioner Mejia put in while some of us were resting on break, I think she was furiously working, knowing that on some process improvements for this session.
Okay, great.
Yeah, and some of the recommendations from that process improvement, I asked around to like what other counties were doing. I think this one, Pierce County gave some really good suggestions on some recommendations, and so that's why I was like, okay, well, that sounds like, something achievable, so I sent it over to Leonard, and I know that, they've been having internal meetings on what our capacity internally is too, so I look forward to having that discussion and seeing how that turns out.
You remember, we were going through like a 15-page spreadsheet.
And it wasn't
It was like,
helpful.
would be the title of the bill, affordable housing, that sounds good,
You
Then
like
you
clean
find-
water? Yeah, I like clean water.
You'd
Yeah.
find out there's all these,
Yeah.
nuances, like, I don't, it would just
It
be.
was, yeah.
And we would
just-
and we'd do it every Tuesday morning during the session,
Yeah.
it was just.
Yeah, that's not a good use of your time.
So, there are hundreds of bills on your list. And so the way that my database works is you can list what your priority is it high, medium, low? So the bills that are super high, you give those a high. And then if it's medium, it's maybe something that WASAC identifies. So Commissioner Mejia does tremendous amount of work at WASAC as well, and I know Commissioner Fournier, you attend those meetings too. Where we have a lot of in-depth discussions about what's on the WASAC priority list that would most likely affect the county. Maybe those could be either high or medium, and you could see if you wanted to take a position on those. And then those that were just like monitoring, so they could affect you, but maybe it's not that bad. So we can, and I can create reports from that database that like, these are all your highs and these are all the bills. Or the way I've been doing it is by category, these are all the bills that affect this or that or that. So there's different ways. And then I also, in an attempt to, be as much help as I can make your database available to the county, to someone in the county, to be able to go in there and run your own reports when you want to get information too, and do it different ways. And more than happy to sit down, if you want to do that, sit down with someone and say, this is how you get in there, this is how you do it, so that you have just like on-demand reports based on the information that goes in there. And I'm pretty good about
Yeah, you're pretty quick.
making sure that, anything I see, I'd like all 374 bills that have been pre-filed, I've looked at them. Some of them, obviously, I know I don't have to read the bill, but others are like, oh, maybe I need to read that. Yeah, so, and they get put on there, so. And then, again, the Thursday night meetings that I go to, if there are any that I've missed, that, those are get identified, and then I'll put those, and I can put notes on there too, like, county needs to know about this because, this is why, so. And then, I will also be doing weekly reports on top of, the hearing schedule that comes out, and then, of course, texts and emails and, for all the things that pop up, because it's just not a sophisticated process in terms of this is how it works and this is how you move forward. So it's kind of like, yeah.
Anything else for Deb? Got it covered?
Yep,
All right,
thank you, Deb, for being here.
Thank you.
All right, next topic up is Board of Equalization update.
Commissioners, this is a topic that we've talked about in, I think in maybe even late 2024, 2025.
2024 for sure.
Yeah. I appreciate the team's effort. Special thanks to Maria for really taking this topic and getting in closer to it to understand the nuances. Also special thanks to Josh, he stepped out for a second, but he's kind of led a team in looking at how the workflow plays out. Our desire is to make improvements in this area. Our long-term approach will be to move Board of Equalization from HR to central services, but there's some work in central services with a new director that we need to prioritize first. Then with some of the budget impacts, we need to make sure that there's appropriate resources. Central services took a significant cut, and we appreciate them being such team players, but it is, we are recalibrating their ability to perform certain tasks and efforts during this process. So this is a promised presentation to come to you. I think what this presentation will show is that there's a coordination interaction, and there are some process improvements we can continue to do even before we move it. A little teaser will be some of the processes don't necessarily have recommended or best practice timeframes. And so when things move from one point in the process to the next, there is no time frame right now, and we can establish some guidelines as to what those timeframes should be, so that we're keeping track. If it's taking too long, we can touch it. But I do want to just focus the conversation to what's available resources. I believe is there one staff member or two? Two staff members that handle thousands of appeals on an annual basis. And then we have a voluntary board that hears these proceedings. So we're thankful for everyone involved, but it is something where it's not as if we have a huge team that are working on this. So with that, I'll hand over to Maria, and she can walk us through. And of course, if there are any questions, please stop and ask.
Good morning, Commissioners. Maria Ponte, HR Director. So my plan for the presentation is just a refresher on what the Board of Equalization does, how they're staffed, talk a little bit about some of the backlog and what we've been doing to reduce that backlog, and then answer any questions that you may have. Am I doing the clicker? Or?
I can help you.
Perfect, thank
Which do you prefer, HR Director? To click or not click?
I'd rather not click.
Okay.
I'm not too techy.
No, we'll take care of it.
Okay, so the Board of Equalization, they hear in appeals of property valuations, and per state law, it's actually a duty of the Board of County Commissioners, but the statute allows you to appoint a board, and that's what this Thurston County has been doing. I don't know how far back, but as far as I've been here. They're independent and they're quasi judicial body, which means that they're actually making decisions, and rather than like recommendations that some of the other commissions do. And their duty is to ensure that property assessments are fair, equitable, and based on market value. The appointment of the members is done by the Board of County Commissioners. In this slide, I do have an update because they recently held elections. So Diane Poost is no longer the chair. She's now the vice chair. John Graver is the chair, and Ted May is a member. There are also alternates in the event that one of the members isn't able to participate. And if you want to stop me at any point with questions, please do so. In terms, next slide. In terms of staffing, as Leonard said, there are 2 administrative support. They're full-time, so they're 100% dedicated to supporting the Board of Equalization work. You've met Ruth Elder. Once a year she comes forward to make a request to open the appeals for the appeal period. There's somebody else that she works very hard. You don't have the opportunity to meet her because she's behind the scenes, and that's Lisa Ryan. Next slide. So the appeal process itself is triggered when the assessor's office sends the valuation notices to property owners, the taxpayers. If you own a home, you get these yearly. By state statute, it's normally sent out by May 31st, but for many reasons, sometimes it goes out later in the year. But once that is sent out, the homeowner has 60 days to file an appeal. So if they disagree with the assessment, they can appeal that. They have 60 days, and there are a number of documents that must be included with their appeal. That also then triggers an opportunity for the assessor staff to review some of these appeals, which means they might agree with the taxpayer and reduce their assessment. That is also triggered by a separate WAC, and so the appeal has to have been filed in order for that, and then the hearing could not have happened. So once the hearing is concluded, they're no longer able to stipulate, which just means they're settling it. If it's not stipulated, then the hearing is scheduled. There's not currently a time frame specified by statute. Ideally, right, if we didn't have a backlog, the appeals would come in, they would get processed, and that hearing would be scheduled within a year. It's currently taking multiple years to do that. Once the hearing occurs, then the board issues a decision. There is a statute that says that should be done in 45 days. It is currently taking longer than that because of the sheer numbers. And then if the taxpayer disagrees with the BOE determination, they have 30 days to file to the State Board of Tax Appeals. And so something that Leonard had mentioned is this work takes a high degree of coordination with the between the BOE staff and the assessor's office. It's rather symbiotic. One thing triggers a process, and then we work on that, and then that re-triggers it and hands it off to the other moving party. So I wanted to highlight the amount and sheer effort that goes into processing appeals. And once it's filed with the BOE, staff has to review and make sure that the appropriate signatures are there, and that I mentioned earlier that there's certain documentation that the petitioner has to supply. Then it's assigned a petition number, and then it's entered into a database, and it's laser fished. And by laser fishing the appeal, that allows the assessor's office to then see what the individual is appealing. Let's see here. If staff review it and it's complete, then that goes into the queue for scheduling. But I'm not even sure how many, but there's a good degree of numbers where they're incomplete, the appeal is incomplete, or it's not timely, or somewhere in that tax period, ownership changed. And then that triggers a lot of back and forth between staff and the taxpayers. And so it's a very time-consuming process. So if the appeal that's incomplete, they produce all the information they have to, then that also goes into the queue. But if they fail to provide the necessary information, then that goes to the BOE for dismissal. Next slide. So what this slide is showing you is from 2020 to 2024, I thought it would be helpful for you to see the number of appeals that are filed. Historically, these numbers fluctuate, so it's not like they're always increasing. Sometimes they increase, then sometimes they decrease. It's rather unpredictable. But as you can see in 2020, there were close to 500, in 2021, 685. 2022, there were over 1,000. 2023, there were 600, over 600. In 2024, there were 810.
Maria?
Yes.
Chair, can I ask a question?
Go ahead, yeah.
Was there a change in process, in evaluation process by the assessor's office, or has anyone looked at root cause as to why such a significant increase between 2021 and 2022?
I know that we've done some workflow. We haven't actually been able to involve the assessor's office yet, but I think there's multiple reasons. If you think back to the housing market, and there were all the bidding wars, right? Like, so the price of homes go up, then that tends to have an impact in part of the appraisal process.
And two pieces that we are looking at under consideration is there was a large degree of commercial filings that year. And it could have been that there was the use of the e-filing. E-filing also likely led to a number of incomplete applications. So we think it's probably those two pieces that caused the spike.
In my next slide, I'll talk a little bit about factors that I have contributed to this. But one thing that Josh just mentioned, there's two types of appeals. There's residential and then there's commercial. So think about the big box companies. They may file 50 petitions in one fell swoop. And because they're commercial, they're just more complicated and they're even more time consuming.
So look at the jump on the appeal type. In 2021, it's 131 for commercial. In 2022, it's 557.
And while staff has not finished processing all of the new appeals for the 2025 tax assessment, they're estimating there's probably between 500 and 600 appeals. So next slide, we can talk a little bit more about the.
Actually, can we go back one real quick, sorry. If you see 2020, 2021, remaining is 0. So they've cleared that workflow and they're still working on items from 2022 forward. So you can see how it's reduced going forward.
It's a large number of incomplete though.
Yeah, and I'll talk a little bit about that.
Thanks, sorry.
That's incomplete filings, right? So not having all the adequate information.
So next slide. All right. So as you know, nothing happens in a vacuum. And so there were multiple factors that contributed to this backlog. One is just what we talked about. It's just the sheer number of them that come in. But if you think about it, there's limited hearing capacity. The board is part-time and we only have one clerk. She has to attend all of the hearings. And then she also schedules the hearings and then she also has to issue those decisions. So that's quite a bit of work. There were also pandemic era delays, and for you that are familiar with the court systems, they experienced it too. We had to try to pivot to virtual hearings. The other thing that we did, which we thought was going to be a great solution, is we pivoted to electronic filing. But that had the consequences, as what Jennifer just said, it increased the number of incompletes because people could just go in the system, file their appeal to get it timely, but then not do all the follow through. And that requires either a phone call, an email, and in some cases, an actual letter saying you need to provide this and this. So it actually created a bigger workload for the staff. We talked a little bit about that large spike in 2022. We're still working through that. The staff have made a lot of progress. I think there's probably under 300 appeals that need to be attended to. And the other issue, we moved here to the atrium, and so we had to pause hearings for them to pack up, and so they were actually part of the final phase of moving them in here. And so during that whole time period, they weren't able to process or hear any of the, schedule any of the appeals.
Why was commercial? I didn't quite understand. I mean, I see the numbers, but why was commercial spiked in 2023?
I'm not sure. I'd have to consult with the assessor's office just to see if there was something in their process. My personal recollection is the housing market, just building market was so hot, and I think it just had this impact of increasing values.
But that's not what it shows, because it shows that residential went down.
Well, no, so think about, they get a receipt, they get a slip from the assessor that says your property is worth this much. And they say, I don't think it is because commercial properties are going down because of the pandemic. So then they file an appeal that says my property isn't worth as much as you think it is. So that's what the spike in the filings are, is they're contesting the valuation of their commercial property 2 years after the pandemic hit the market for the commercial properties. Is that helpful?
So there was an extra layer for the commercial owners, whereas residential customers swallowed the increased valuations. Commercial, we're saying that's not what we're seeing because there was vacancies and not.
That's my perspective on why that spike of filings happened.
Maria, was there any thought to, I understand why we moved during the pandemic and the access for doing e-filings. Has there been anything that's been looked at in terms of what mechanisms or steps in the process can help with complete filings or stopping the e-filings because the percentage is so?
So, the next slide.
It's like I'm teeing it up. I didn't.
No, I really appreciate that. Thank you for asking. So we, working with Josh, have met with staff, and we were working through a workflow, and we started to evaluate what else can we do to move things along. And so we started the use of a hearings examiner in October of 2024. At first, we were concerned that because the way the statute is, a hearings examiner hears the case, but then they have to present it to the Board of Equalization. We weren't sure if that would actually create an efficiency, but because the hearings examiner can hear more volume, it actually has helped us move things along. We've started bundling appeals from the same petitioner for different years. So if they filed an appeal in 2022 and 2023, we're scheduling them at the same time. We discontinued the online filing because of the issues that it created. What staff have communicated to me is when individuals file either like their paper petition, they can come in, staff can review it with them, they can say you're missing this, this, and this. So just having that touch point will also help. So they're seeing more petitions that are complete this year. So I think that that's fantastic news. As I mentioned, the clerk schedules the hearings, she sits through them, then she has to draft. And so those were getting backed up. So we found some capacity and had the administrative assistant help draft orders. She was able to accomplish over 100 of them, which is really impressive. And Josh and I will continue looking at other operational enhancements. Any questions? So what I really, oh, go ahead. Oh, yes, Commissioner Mejia.
Thank you. I'm wondering if the consideration of the Board of County Commissioners hearing cases, I mean, for me, right, like looking.
Why did I bring this up?
Yeah, Ty brought this up, so it's Ty's fault, and now it's been stuck in my head. So blame Ty for the idea.
We do.
Blame the chair. So you know, because
That was a joke, Commissioner. Yeah.
I don't
That's a
take
joke.
anything as a joke.
No real
But you know, like realistically, right, we're seeing kind of these remaining, and then 2025 is about, you know, they're working on 2025, and so I'm like, is there a way that maybe the board can set a couple of Mondays, or
I'll knock them all out in a weekend.
and
You still have staff support though. You still have staff
Right.
that have to.
You still need a clerk, then the clerk would have to write those orders. So it's twofold. Currently, the goal is for them to have hearings 3 days a week, and they do multiples. I mean, they try to schedule as many as they can in one sitting. The familiarity I have with your schedule is I'm not sure that an extra Monday for you to do that would accomplish that. I also don't know if you can have a twofold. The commissioners I'd have to research this, the commissioners doing the hearings and a board of equalization. I don't know that you could have both, I'd have to research that.
Well, I think if we just appoint 3 commissioners, Commissioner Klaus, Commissioner Fournier, and
Right.
Commissioner Mentor right here.
Yourself, though?
Oh my gosh, you just did that.
You weren't there that day.
You just did not it.
We can just, I'm just, not to I don't wanna add, of course, I guess the unintended consequences I'm seeing, don't wanna add, strain already the limited resources we have, but if the Board of County Commissioners can do that, and that is technically one of our obligations, I think it is something to kind of consider and have up there as we're thinking of, of ways to increase that capacity, and knowing that, I've been reached out by several constituents who are waiting, and, are interested in this. So for me, it's okay, we've been doing really great in other areas, such as the court system, to kind of avoid those caseload delays and shrink them down. We've done it with CPED. And so, is there a way that we can do that here? And is it activating the board? And
I'd maybe just jump in real quick. And these operational enhancements, what I've seen as we've been going through it is looking at those things, they have made some changes. And so giving a little time to let some of those operational enhancements work their way through to see what successes we're having and see what more can be done. There is an issue of timing that we need to address, and making sure that we've got the pieces of the puzzle that the staff has in terms of resources. Before we shift the process, I'd like to see how these operational enhancements, what success they create. That would be my recommendation. Since we're just now looking at this, appreciate the board's direction to have a look at it. And this is that first review back from what we found.
I also think there's a component of coordination with some other departments and offices, and we want to get our ducks in a row and do as much as we can on that side, and then have a productive engagement with the assessor to see if there's any ways that we can add to the efficiencies and some of the times gained. There's a slide coming up that shows some of the progress.
Yeah, but if I could
Sure.
just expand on what county manager just said. I talked about this coordination between the BOE and the assessor's office. So the, valuation notices starts the workload for the BOE. But once they schedule those hearings, and then that triggers work for the assessor's office, because they will review the petition, and then they'll provide a written response. So they like to come to these hearings prepared. And historically, the 2 offices have worked together on that. So let's say that the commissioners were able to do hearings on Mondays and the BOE the rest. That's gonna have a huge impact on the assessors.
I would,
staff.
at one point, I know this has evolved, this whole presentation's about that evolution, but at one point, we were being told that, I think it was when we were considering the hearing examiner expansion, and we were being told that, well, that's not really gonna help because there's a bottleneck in the assessor's office in terms of their lack of staffing.
Yeah, and
So,
so
I mean,
I think that maybe that didn't materialize. Like I said, we were a little bit apprehensive about, will this really work, but it has. The other thing I would like to point out, that historically there have been ebb and flows. There have been times when the BOE has had backlogs. At least 2 commissioners have been here for 2 or more terms, and it's probably the first, over the last few years, this is the first time you've heard of this backlog. So the hope is that once we can get back to more of a status quo where we're doing hearings, in a reasonable period of time, typically within that year, that I won't be sitting here trying to explain to you what I'm, the perspective that I'm trying
how long are the
to.
hearings?
I think, real back to your point, so we looked internally at what the BOE operations were. And to the county manager's point, we haven't done that next level of coordination with the assessor's office, is what you're talking about in terms of the bottleneck. So we wanted to look at our processes first, and that's what this is. And you're remembering a previous conversation, which is our next step to have that conversation. We haven't done that yet in this iteration.
I would just point out that I don't know a lot, I don't wanna speak with more sounding like I have more expertise than I do, but I know that it's very important in this context to have consistency. And if you have a board of equalization, then commissioners, I mean, I was gonna ask, could you
I
have
think
two
that could
boards
be
of
a
equalization? And
conflict.
it's the same question. If you have two different entities, like, we would need a lot of training in order to be able to do the job accurately and consistently with the,
And there is, thank you for that, because there is a course that BOE members must participate in. And it's provided by the Department of Revenue. I mean, so when you think about the subject matter, it is complex. Commissioner Mejia?
Thank you for mentioning the Department of Revenue, because that is my next question, right? The Department of Revenue has been concerned with kind of some of our numbers over the years. And, you know, when the hearings examiner, you know, that was kind of their recommendation of like, have you guys thought of a hearings examiner? And that's kind of how we started here. So I'm wondering, have we also had conversations with them, like, to ask them about the continuity issues? Because I want to be sure that, you know, for me, as we're looking at all these processes and operational enhancements, I want to be sure that, you know, our state agencies are knowing that we're doing these things too, to try to address the problem, because I don't want them to come in and have to, they don't know any of this and them step in and try to, so I'm just wondering.
I do know that periodically, BOE staff provides them updates. I don't know when the last time was, but the next slide, I think, is helpful to show you like all the progress that's been made.
To your point, Commissioner Mejia, though, we will make it a point to reach out to them and let them know we're engaged in process improvements. That may help them realize that if they're hearing concerns, that we understand and we're working on it, to alleviate pressure building on their end.
Yeah,
So,
we'll check in with the BOE staff to
yeah,
make sure it's done. Thank you for that.
So since October of 2024, the reason I picked that date is that's when we started using the hearings examiner. There's been quite a bit of progress. I have some slightly updated numbers from these, but number of cases heard through October of 2025 is 278. There have been 60 withdrawals. That means for whatever reason, the petitioner decided not to pursue their appeal. There have been 264 stipulations reached between the assessor and the petitioner. There have been 238 orders issued and 70 petitions dismissed. So in that year's time, they have whittled down the appeals by 910. It's not to say that there's not a large degree of numbers, but they have really been making monumental efforts. I know that staff is putting a lot of hours. I've approved overtime.
So that's October 2024 through July 2025.
So my numbers are through October 2025. This is just a
Gotcha.
little, I updated it and didn't get it to the clerk on time.
October to October.
Yes.
Got it.
so what's the total amount of backlogs, cases stacked up?
So go back to slide 5, I think.
Yeah. So, no,
Slide
actually,
6.
slide 6, looking at the remaining numbers, it's 1,285, but we have to consider that there are 500 to 600 more cases.
They just keep coming every year.
So it will take a number of years to get caught up. And like I said, it's not the first time that the BOE has had multiple years of backlogs, and we've worked through it. I appreciate your patience. I know that I've talked to individuals and, you know, they're unhappy for multiple reasons. They're unhappy by their assessments. They feel like they're being taxed out of their properties. And then when they hear it's gonna take 2 to 3 years, that's just adds more salt to the wound. Let's see, can you go to slide 10? I've already talked about this, but the assessor issued the new valuations on October 10th. That triggered the 60-day period. That deadline was December 9th. and there are still stacks of appeals that need to be input. And so during that 60-day period, the staff, that's really what they're focused on, so they haven't had hearings for the last couple of months. And with that is my presentation. Are there any other questions or any other thing you would like me to research and follow up on?
I think to Commissioner Mejia's point, it'd be good for us to let the state agencies know. Maybe even ask them if they're interested in a quick Teams meeting to go through some of this information. There is progress being made, but there's still more to be done. So I think our long-term plan would be to align this, it's a pretty technical function, to align it with a department that has more operational day-to-day interaction. But obviously, as we ended 2025, working through our budget, that put a bit of a delay in how we look at that. We just have to give some time and make sure we're not overloading one department. So I think we will continue to look at process improvement on the flow, some recommended timeframes so that if things are taking too long, staff are touching base and figuring out what is the holdup. And figuring out if we can continue to increase the output.
I think there's also a resource issue. So when you see this chart and you triggers the new 60-day appeal period, expect to add hundreds of new cases and then few to no hearings. If you go back to slide 5, it's the same 2 people that are doing all those reviews and getting all the big box is 2 people. All those 4 little boxes below it are the same 2 people. The review of that, they're contacting each one of those applications to help them along with completing their applications. That's the same 2 people. So there's a resource issue that we're working on the process and the workflow, but when you have the same 2 humans looking at 1,200 applications and trying to work through that process, that's an issue.
Well, that's the appropriate process improvement, though. You first look at, you fix the process, you streamline the process before you look at adding resources.
Which is, I appreciate Maria's good work on doing that, starting that process improvement.
And that's an interesting point, because it's something, again, the value that the county has with us looking operationally at this, we really should be doing this for offices and departments before staff requests come through. To identify, is it a process situation, is it a people situation, and how do we identify? So good conversations happening in the background. This is a good case study for that. Thanks, Maria.
And for many years, it was just Ruth doing all of the work from A to Z. And she was provided a half-time, and then about 10 years ago, we were able to make a successful case to add a full-time FTE. And so even with that, it's a challenge, but.
Well, it's a correlation too. I mean, property values have been increasing in Thurston County. So if people have been living here a long time and their property values have been going, like they're experiencing that where they wouldn't have filed before, filed an appeal, they're looking at that and saying, wait a second, so.
Yeah, the fastest, I've heard it said in economic settings and in other settings that Thurston County is one of the fastest growing counties in the state. And that's a wonderful opportunity, but also comes with some of the challenges, and those challenges are being seen in processes where it's tied to the influx of appeals or requests that are going to be higher. Thanks so much, Maria.
You're welcome.
Item 5, Commissioner items. Number 1 is Department of Natural Resources project.
Commissioners, I put this item, I'm gonna hand something out here. I think it provides a little bit of context. There's an opportunity that has been brought to our attention. I know that some commissioners have been engaged in it already.
This is what it was. It was me.
It's you. It's always you.
And what we wanna talk about today is
It's always you.
level of interaction that would be needed would require some staff time and effort, and so I would actually need board direction to do that. But there is some land that DNR owns right now. It's in the UGA, within the county's UGA, the city of Lacey, but not likely to be annexed. And I think earlier this year, this came before the board, and the board actually wrote a letter of support in trying to get, I think it was a federal request for infrastructure out to this site. And things were looking very promising for that request. In fact, it got initial approval. The administration change, priorities change, and it didn't go forward. But there's an opportunity for us to look at a 20-acre parcel and determine how the county partners with DNR and explore options for that. So this handout has one consideration of what a proposal would look like. I think there could be a number of different components, but it would just take staff time to kind of unfold and package it.
Thank you. Can I provide some context? Thank you, County Manager. Yeah, so just like kind of the proposal that is at the front, that was kind of the initial plan. This is when, you know, DNR was, had their own housing unit. They were planning to kind of do this and move forward with it. Administrations at DNR have changed, and that's no longer their focus, so that unit is no longer in existence. However, there is still availability with this proposal. You know, it's something that, while not a main objective, it is something that they would still be interested in having a conversation. And so, you know, what I would want, I've had multiple meetings with Crosby Carter. She was with DNR beforehand, but now she is with One Drop. And One Drop is working already on a basically similar project in Pierce County where, you know, they purchased land from DNR and are doing a housing. So this project is already being worked on in Pierce County. Wants to do kind of the same thing in Thurston County. There is kind of a lot of moving pieces with this. So I think that giving direction to the county manager to kind of look through all the different pieces of this and work on this would be a great first step. And kind of what we've talked with Crosby, right, is, you know, it doesn't have to be Habitat for Humanity. That was the DNR proposal. If it's something that the county is interested in looking into, can be more of an RFP process, put it out there for the community. And but again, that's just very kind of throwing spaghetti at the wall and nothing concrete. But it would just give staff the time to look into this some more and see if it kind of if it's a viable way forward.
How I would approach this board would be, if you were to give me direction to work on this, we would take a look at this proposal in detail, work with our CPED department, and then all the different components of it, because there's several different aspects to the 28 acres and the land that's owned by DNR, the fact that it needs infrastructure, the fact that there may need to be a new request for federal funds. We'd map all that out and come and kind of brief the board on all the different components. What are the upsides? What are some of the challenges? To then get the board's concurrence that do they want us to continue to explore it? So it is a property that has some very interesting components of possibility. And that's where I think it's worth us having staff time to look at it. And then we can come back and brief. This isn't direction to go and do anything, it's direction to research it and then come back and give you a deeper briefing. But that deeper briefing would take quite a bit of engagement and and hence the need for staff.
Can I just fill in a detail that I think is missing, is that, because when I first heard about this, I'm like, why are we involved in this? What does the county have to do with any of this? And the answer I got was that DNR can only, but because of their own rules,
Yes,
they're dragging us into it in a sense because they can't dispose of the property to anything but another jurisdiction. So we would have to be involved to allow this thing to go through the chain.
yes,
That's why we're,
That's helpful.
yeah,
Why wouldn't the city, why is this an area where the city wouldn't annex?
So because it's so where this property is located, and thank you, Commissioner Menser, for that, because yeah, when I was explaining to you, that was kind of part of one of the questions you asked. It is very far down into the UGA area. And I think that would be part of this engagement that if the board were to give direction, it would be having conversations with the city of Lacey. The city of Lacey, I know Mayor Ryder has been very supportive of this project from the very start when it first came up. And even now in conversations, he's been very supportive of a project like this moving forward. But I know that there are some intricacies of it being the city of Lacey over the county, and there's been conversations, and I believe that those conversations are ongoing. And then another factor I will add on is that Senator Cantwell was the one who pushed this forward the first time and got that approval. She has been reaching back out because she is still very interested in this project. And so kind of why this still has kept on wheels is because Senator Cantwell's staff have been reaching out, asking like, is this project, like what is going on? They've been keeping and asking kind of just where we, where this is at, because it is something that they are very interested in.
yeah, and to the annexation question, get you the address, but in Lacey's initial annexation proposals, this one kind of fell outside of most of their proposals.
Till you run sewer and water out there. Then it
Which
changes
could
the
change.
equation, yeah.
Yeah. And that's where I think I see some opportunity for the county, and I just need time to kind of map that out and see if those are real opportunities or not, and is it worth our engagement and involvement in a project like this?
I mean, I'm okay with the preliminary inquiries that you're proposing at this juncture. Is the board in consensus with that?
Yes.
Commissioner
Yeah.
Fournier? Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's intriguing.
Thank you so much. Sorry, Josh, when you asked me about this, I was like, oh, this is probably a tie thing, so.
Came to me like, is this your thing? Like, no.
We're done, we'll be done.
We got one more item, commissioner reports on committees, although,
We're gonna motion after all that Board of Equalization talk.
yeah. I don't have anything, so Commissioner Fournier, anything you have to report on from committees?
No, sir, I did that last night.
Commissioner Mejia?
No.
Commissioner Cos? All right, that's it, we're adjourned.
Thanks so much.